Hi all, let's look at another interesting game from the candidates. So this is in round 8, Alexander Grischuk against Vladimir Kramnik. So we have c4 from Alexander Grischuk, e6, knight c3, d5, d4, knight f6, knight f3, c5, e3. So this is semi-Tarrasch territory. D takes c4, bishop takes c4, a6. The usual move here is to stop black playing b5. It seems this is very well trodden, a4. For example, this path is very well trodden. And actually, there's an interesting line here with knight takes d4, temporary piece sack to get the piece back, and it's just an equal position. But anyway, this game didn't take that path. We see bishop b3 instead. b5, e4. C takes, knight takes, bishop b7, e5, knight e4. White allows some fracturing of his pawns to occur on the queen side. Knight takes c3, b takes, knight c6, a4, and you might think there's a lot of pressure being built up on d4 here. White actually plays a takes b5 now, and black responds with a takes b5, and you might have a question here. Well, I did anyway. Knight takes d4. Can knight takes d4 be played? For example, c takes, bishop takes. Interestingly, this is pretty sharp, this position, attacking the rook, but there's actually rook a4 hitting that bishop, and if we get this position, there's actually queen h5 hitting the bishop again. And on bishop f6 now, b takes a6 can actually recapture that pawn, because if bishop takes, there's a tactic here. Can you see that? A tactic. 5 seconds. Okay, rook takes a6 is possible here because of queen b5 check, and white would be better. So yeah, there's a very big tactical forcing move sequence on knight takes d4 behind the scenes here. Also, if we consider queen takes d4 for a moment, b takes a6, this is interesting. So yeah, this is a really interesting variation. For example, here check, bishop g5 check, bishop e3 is very good for white because of this bishop takes c5 check here. So there's some sort of sharp stuff here, but black just plays a takes b5. We have rook takes, bishop takes, knight takes b5. So you might think this is a little odd from black to be a pawn down, but I think there's enough pressure at the moment to compensate. If black is too keen to exchange off queens and take on e5, black castled actually. Vladimir Kramnik castled. If he took on d1, let's have a quick look at this. Knight takes e5. There's a check, and there's a check here actually, which is quite annoying because it weakens e6. And there's a tactic here. Knight takes e6, hitting the bishop. It's a bit chaotic, isn't it? But it ends up as though white's slightly better there. So anyway, black castled, and white took on d8. So pawn up, and he holds the e5 pawn. Pawn up. Okay, h6, h4, giving the king some air. Knight e7, rook d1, not minding an exchange of rooks, that's refused. Bishop c4, bishop c6, knight goes back, bishop e4, and we have h5 trying to fix some pawns on the king side. But is this weak later? Is this going to be weak, this pawn? Knight d5. Now white could play bishop d2, just humble retreat, protect c3, and apparently, you know, white technically has a small edge. White is a pawn up after all, so it might not be too much of a surprise. But white committedly gave up the light square bishop, giving black what can be the dreaded bishop pair. So it's a pawn down, but with the dreaded bishop pair. Can black at least hold the position? Rook c8 was played here, supporting the bishop. There might be an idea of knight f5, by the way, in this position. If white has another move, knight f5 hitting the bishop. So anyway, that's guarded against, that's protected. Rook e1, bishop c4, knight f3, bishop e3. Some shuffling around here. Hitting c3. Now that's indirectly defended by knight f1. So if bishop takes c3, then there's rook c1 nasty pin. Thank you very much. So it's indirectly defended. Rook c4, rook e3, then bishop moves, knight g3, bishop moves again, king h2, bishop c1, rook e2, bishop f4, king goes here unpinning, rook a4, king comes out, bishop c1, king f3, bishop d3, rook e1 hitting the bishop, bishop moves, king e3 hitting the other bishop, bishop moves, king d2, bishop moves, rook b1, bishop's protected, king d3, bishop a4, knight e4, bishop a3, king e3, bishop c2, rook e1, bishop b3, g4, so gaining some space on the king side, bishop d5, king d3, bishop e7, bishop, rook b1. Now rook a8 was played, f4, gaining some more space on the king side. So overall white's plan is to sort of squish on the king side. Bishop h4, rook h1, bishop drops back again, rook b1, bishop c7, king e3, king h7, knight d6, king g8, protecting f7 there, rook b5, bishop c6, rook b4, bishop d8, bishop b6, wanting a trade, bishop h4 refusing, bishop d4, bishop g2, rook b2 hitting the bishop, bishop moves, rook b6 hitting the bishop again, bishop moves, and again, rook b3 now, it's slightly different. So bishop g3, c4, bishop h2, and now f5, very exciting, f5 now, at move 63. So e takes, knight takes f5, so interesting that white splits his own structure now. Is this pawn dangerous? We have an immediate threat of knight e7 check, by the way, to win that bishop. So black gets out of the way of that. Bishop b2, rook e8, knight d6 hitting f7. So here, and the rooks. The rook moves, okay. And now we have rook b8. Okay, so I've got a variation for you, a very exciting variation. Black played f6. If he plays bishop takes e5, which might be one of your exciting questions, bishop takes, rook takes, king d4. This position is a small edge for white. That's okay for white. And it's a bit more clarified, knight against bishop. So anyway, we have f6 instead. Rook c8 hitting the bishop, bishop moves. Maybe bishop d7 was pretty solid actually. Even though it goes into a self pin here, this position might actually be okay for black. It should be even. Apparently that's hit there, got a pawn there. So anyway, we have bishop h1, knight f5, and this is getting dangerous for black now with this e pawn. And in fact here it seems as though white can get maybe a decisive advantage with e6 by force. This pawn has been given to white basically. I mean, it's very dangerous, and this wasn't played. E takes f6 was played, so this is a critical moment as well at move 70. Now if e6, let's say black takes the bishop, e7, and if check, the king can wriggle over here, and there's no rook e3, so black ends up just losing basically. Yeah, so e6 does seem pretty dangerous in this position. I'm not sure exactly how black is meant to defend there. If he plays check instead, then there's a cunning move here. Can you spot it? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now. White's play. Okay, there's bishop c3 here, because if taking king d2 on the rook, and now threatening e7 and stuff, so here e7 check, king can sort of wriggle over there, and then queen, the exchange up, thanks very much, that should be winning for white. After bishop f3, just to go a bit further, this, if taking, that's immune because of rook e4, for example, winning material, because if g5 we can just do en passant Thanks very much. Take the bishop. So yeah, there's lines which this e6 does seem, it seems more than promising. It seems like it's winning, but e takes f6 was played. Now we have check. Yeah, because if rook takes b2, then this is a decisive advantage. There's rook h8 threatened, there's g8 threatened. White has just a big decisive advantage there. So we have this rook b3 check. Does that come to the rescue in a similar fashion? Almost comes to the rescue in a similar fashion to the other variation. Well, here again, white plays guess what? So this is an important tactic to remember. White plays bishop c3. I think the problem with something like king d4, that there might be checks and stuff. It's better to lure the rook to be attacked here. So actually, I've got a variation for that. Here, check. Yes, getting that pawn out with check. And this actually should be a very equal and even position. Yes, white's going to just have a perpetual there. So it is actually a key move not to go forward with the king here, to play bishop c3 instead. And we have g takes f6 now, because if rook takes, then we have king d4 on the rook, and that's going to be better for white. So here we have g takes f6 here, king d2, check, king c2, and yeah, it seems as though things are peaceful again without that dreaded e pawn. Rook b8, now even peacefully having an exchange of rooks. So is that the end of the game now? Okay, white's still a pawn up, but isn't black holding with the bishop here? We have knight e7. Now at move 75, it's been observed. Actually, there was like a Kibitzer on Chess.com he says he's 1100, and says 1100 would see this idea to draw here. Can you see an idea to draw here if you're 1100 and above? Black to play. Maybe Kramnik was pretty shattered by this time, by the way. These one-day games, I know from experience, they're pretty shattering experiences, exhausting. So if there is a clear way to draw, maybe he's just pretty exhausted by this time. So it moves 75. What he did play seems, okay, in retrospect, in hindsight, which is 20/20 vision, a bit controversial here. When he has a move which does seem pretty logical, if you were playing black, what would you play in this position? So 1100's, all 1100 pluses out there. Speak or forever hold your peace. Okay, bishop f3 just seems to attack the pawn chain. But you have to factor in the cunning little tactical trick now, I'm afraid, because chess is cruel. Knight d5. Now if bishop takes, then there's the horrible knight takes f6 winning the bishop. Thanks very much. But here, with f6 under fire, black can play, guess what black plays here? Okay, bishop e5, and this should actually neutralize white. This should be an even position after taking, with that pawn chain under attack, knight e3, and this should be even apparently. Yeah, because the king could get to g5, for example. Yeah, it should be even. So, but instead we have this check here. King d2, check, which again, there's this possibility of playing bishop f3 here, by the way. But this is a lot more tricky now, because after knight d5, it's different actually. Again, we've got that same trick, but this is different because there's a different there's subtle differences in the position, and I'm not sure bishop e5 is sufficient here. There's actually technically a stronger move recipe in this position, which is king g7, just letting white take on f6. Whatever way white takes on f6, there's a certain fragility to the position. So if bishop takes f6, check here, this should be fine for black. And if knight takes f6, check, check, and king f7, and this should be fine as well, because the king's sort of cut off. Look, all the squares been cut off, and black's going to play basically soon bishop h4, taking and taking here, and it should be a total draw. So that should be the mechanism here. Okay, so that should be even with that little giving up f6 is probably the safest method there. Okay, so there were two, it seems, ways of equalizing, but let's go back after the check. Yeah, this is more controversial. So bishop f3 seems to be even here the way to go. Bishop f3 here. On king, no. So we have this check, king e2, which guards the f3 square. So it's actually ruled out. Black's actually let white rule out bishop f3, which does seem like a pretty logical move. Try and munch up the pawn chain from the base. You know, the pack of cards effect. If you take out the base of the pawn chain, the other pawns are weaker. So it does seem as though white's been gifted this king e2, protecting f3. We have king g7. And now it's not so pleasant. Knight f5 check. This ending here is pretty lost for black. If black takes, he's pretty lost here. Even though it's only one extra pawn. This isn't a strong outside pass pawn here, and that would be winning. So black plays king f7, but here, can you see what white played? Yeah, simplifying bishop d2. It's again going to be a winning ending on bishop takes and bishop takes. This is just a winning ending. The king just comes up here. This is absolutely decisive. So bishop d2, bishop e5. Yeah, taking this pawn. King e6. And now bishop e3, just prepared to give up a pawn, just because this is also a very strong ending for white. So black snaps up that pawn, but look, two outside pawns here, which are overloading black. The black king scurries across soon. Here now, king f7, bishop f4, and now c6. The black king scurries across to try and rescue the situation over there. But now this one is overloading black. King c8, king e2, getting to this point is very critical with the king on d3. The game ended here because if, for example, black Vladimir had to resign. If bishop h8, can you see what white simply plays here to finish things off? This is like an instructive endgame position in its own right. You might be confused how white wins this. You have to do something pretty dynamic and outrageous. Well, not that outrageous, it's an endgame, but I know pawns are like more valuable in endgame, so you might be reluctant to do this move, but there's a winning move, simple winning move here, white to play, if I give you 5 seconds. Okay, you give up the c7 pawn, you play bishop e3, just to unblockade your h7 pawn. So if takes, bishop d4. Cruel. Totally winning for white. Yeah. It's a shame Kramnik played such a brilliancy game, but you know, maybe sometimes there is a downside in playing an absolute brilliancy in the tournament, because I don't know, the media attention might be heavily on you after playing such a game, and you might have some artistic drive created which can be at the expense of just playing more practically and accepting draws in worse positions and being more objective. Maybe some objectivity is sometimes potentially some objectivity is sometimes lost. I think if you play an absolutely brilliant game and generally attracts ton of media attention for that, which he did in that previous round with his Rxa8 against Iranian. So he's not had great subsequent rounds after that, but okay, that's how it is. But congratulations to Grischuk for grinding that one out. It's not usual that I would cover out of choice 93 move games, but I hope you got some instructive points out of this one. Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.